Hey there, Taylor Elwood with Welcome to the Sacred Masculinity Quest. And today we're talking about what it means to take responsibility for yourself. So, in the last video, I talked about the idea that men don't feel safe. And what does that mean? And as I was relating to it, it wasn't even so much about physical safety, although certainly that plays its own role. And I shared with you a bit about my journey into kung fu and why, for example, I started learning kung fu. But it's also, but I also mainly talked about. So I talked about physical safety, but I also talked about emotional safety and what it means to be safe for yourself on an emotional level. And so I want to talk a bit further about that in relationship to taking responsibility for yourself, because I think that's really an important key to this work. I think like it's interesting because if I go back a year in time, all right, little more than that, I was in an experience where I was not feeling safe with anyone. I was feeling broken and shattered, and I was trying to figure out how to put myself back together. And the answer I came up with was a combination of sacred men work and sacred and self-love. And and it was interesting because when I started taking on the self-love practice, that's when I began to realize like this is real. Like this is hard to do. Like there were days it was really hard to tell myself that I loved myself, not just because it felt awkward or embarrassing or weird, but because it was like, well, if I love myself, then why did I allow myself to have these experiences? And I was kind of like, man, that's rough because I had to be honest and be like, well, obviously I didn't love myself, or at least not enough. But what I've come to realize since then is that I mean, self love is a practice and a process that you learn and takes some work. But part of that work and part of learning how to feel safe with yourself and really, because really say your own sense of safety has to come ultimately from yourself. Like somebody else can maybe make you feel safe momentarily, but at the end of the day you've got to do the work. And it's interesting because right now at the time of this video I'm definitely doing some of that work for myself. I'm in this process of doubling down on my self-love. But it's also interesting because I'm doing this now where I'm in relationship with somebody else, and today I had a moment where I was like, I need some reassurance from this person. And part of me was like, nah, don't do it. Don't put yourself out there. Don't don't make yourself vulnerable to this person. Don't share with her what you need. But I was like, if I don't, then she doesn't know. And so I was like, I'm gonna be safe enough with myself to be vulnerable enough with her. That was what it came down to. I had to be safe enough with myself. So I chose to really ground into that. I'm like, I'm gonna do the opposite of what I'm telling myself right now. Because what I was telling myself is don't say anything, just be stoic and everything else. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna say what I need. And I was taking responsibility for myself then. And it and here's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, she could do whatever she wanted to do. I can't control that. But I was taking responsibility for my need and want by saying, I'm going to be vulnerable and open up and share this. And then whatever that person does, then that's not, that's up to that person. I can't control that person. I can't make that person will choose whatever they're going to do. But I'm going to be vulnerable enough with myself. I'm going to be safe enough with myself to be vulnerable regardless of what happens, whether I get rejected or accepted or all those other things. I think for a lot of men, this is really challenging. We're told that we have to be stoic. We're told that that we have to keep our emotions to ourselves. We're told that we have to be strong, whatever that word strong means. And I think in an emotional sense, that word strong is a rough one. Because is it strong to be withdrawn? Is it strong to withhold yourself? Is it strong to not necessarily? And if anything, it's kind of an abdication of responsibility. One of the things I had a realization around. I was watching this video yesterday, and this guy was talking about how experiences that you have are subject to interpretation. So he was like, well, okay, let's say you have an experience of being rejected, right? You feel rejected for about something. Well, that is subject to interpretation. It's your interpretation of that experience which is defining the experience for you. It's pretty profound when you think about it, because it's like, well, yeah, there's some truth there. So if my experience is subject to interpretation to some degree, like I can choose how I respond to that experience. I can choose how I feel about that experience. For example, I can choose to feel rejected. I can choose to feel accepted. I can choose, because I'm the one on the receiving end of whatever is going on. I could choose that to some degree or another. Now the intent of the other person matters too. Okay, but let's put the intent of the other person aside and just focus in. We're just focusing in on ourselves here. So if we want to be safe in the world, right? If we want to learn how to be safe, one of the things we have to do is we have to be safe enough with ourselves to say it is okay. It is okay to feel this thing that I need and want, and to express it. It doesn't mean it's going to get met by the other person. It doesn't mean that person has any obligation to meet it. They don't, they don't. Nobody has any responsibility for you to you. I think what brought that home for me actually was a interaction where somebody said to me, "It's not my responsibility to satisfy you." Boy, did that hit hard. It's not my responsibility to satisfy you. I sat with that one for a while and I was like, ouch. Did I expect that person to satisfy me? Maybe I did. Did I want that person to satisfy me? Maybe I did. But it's not that person's responsibility. Now, that person could choose to whatever that satisfaction is, cooking a nice meal, giving you a hug, or whatever. I mean, we're going to strip away any context here and just say that it could be anything. Yeah, because it could be. I mean, it's doesn't matter what the activity is, right? It's a choice. But I think that one of the most important things for learning how to feel safe with ourselves is being able to say, okay, whether or not my need or desire or want gets expressed, or gets met, I can express it, and I can feel safe enough and confident enough within myself to express this need or want, and know that it's valid for me. Not that the other person has to do anything with it, or respond to it or care about it or anything along those lines. They don't. But that I can choose to address it for myself. And that's a really important realization right there, that is not spoken to nearly as much as it could be. So, what is my responsibility to myself? It's my responsibility ultimately to satisfy myself, right? Well, how do I do that? I do that by being honest with myself and with others. I do that by learning how to ground myself and be safe with myself in an authentic, empowered way. And with somebody else, I do it by being vulnerable enough with them to share where I'm at and what I'm looking for, but without an expectation that I'll get it. Like, just because I express something doesn't mean it's on them to do anything, right? Now, what it could also mean though is then I can be like, okay, you can't, you don't want to or can't or whatever. So, what kind of agreement or understanding can we come to around this you know, that still allows me to either get this need met or or do we have to revise or change the parameters that we're dealing with here? That can happen too. I think for a lot of men, the challenge that we have around getting our needs and desires met is that we do place the responsibility of that on other people. And we do that because we do that in part because we don't feel safe within ourselves. That sounds kind of weird when you think about it, but bear with me here. The reason we don't feel safe with ourselves is because we've learned to give away that safety to other people. Like, oh, I want this person to make me feel safe. The problem with that is that that person really ultimately at the end of the day can't make you feel safe. They might give you like a moment of feeling safe, but you have to do the work yourself. And that's hard and it's scary and a little terrifying. And I say this because I'm doing that work right now in my own life. Like, I'm like, oh man, I'm sitting with myself lately and I'm like, I really need to work on feeling safe within myself. No one else can do that work for me. No one else can do that work for me. And that's true for you as well. So if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, great, Taylor. So what does that really ultimately mean? Well, I think what it ultimately means is this: you got to learn how to love yourself. That's the first thing. Learn how to love yourself. Second thing is learn how to be honest with yourself and with others about your needs and wants and desires. But just as importantly, learn how to let go of the attachment that you're going to actually get those needs, wants, and desires fulfilled by somebody else. If somebody else chooses to do that with you, that's a gift. It's not an automatic guarantee. It's a gift. And that again, I think is a real reorientation because in a lot of ways, what we find with relationships with other people and even with ourselves is that we have certain ideas as to what we have agreed to. Well, I agreed to this, so they're going to agree to that. This is the covert agreements. I agreed to this, so they're going to agree to do that. Well, here's the thing. We treat those as static. First, we treat those as static agreements when they're not. I mean, every single time somebody agrees to do something with you, they are agreeing all over again because they have made that choice again. Is not an automatic guarantee. It is a choice they have made in that moment. I agree with you to do X, Y, and Z in this moment. So every single time a choice is being made, that's powerful right there. Just think about that. And the other thing is that if we understand that and we start to apply that to ourselves, then we say, well, not just every single time am I making this choice, but I am making this choice with the full knowledge and awareness that I, in and of myself, recognize that this choice could be um, different next time. That I might say something different next time. That okay. Now this is where we say, well, we want consistency. Well, how do we get consistency? Consistency, that's where you kind of have to trust and have faith in yourself and in the other person, and that takes time too. This doesn't happen overnight. Let's take a deep breath. So where am I really going with this? Well, I think that where I'm really ultimately going with this, and is something that I'm kind of working through again myself right now, is that if I'm going to be responsible for anyone, I've got to first of all be responsible for myself. In fact, I can't be responsible for anyone else. The only time that that might be different is if you're dealing with like a little kid. Then yeah, you have to be responsible for that kid, right? They don't necessarily have all the faculties and everything, but again, they're perfectly capable of making their own choices, and you have a limited amount of control over what they do. I mean, it's true. You tell a kid not to do something, and a kid will find a way to do that thing if they really want to. That's true. People in general, like, you can try and tell them what they can or can't do, and watch that blow up on you real quick. So if I say that I'm responsible for something, right? I got to be responsible for myself. I got to be responsible for my safety. I got to be responsible for my feeling of my self love, my validation, all of that stuff. No one else can do that for me. I can hope that they'll love me or that they'll want me, and I can ask. I can say, hey, I want to know that, etc. But at the end of the day, I've also got to love myself. Now, I'm going to give you a little practice here, a little thing that I've been doing, and I recommend doing it every day. So what I do is I get onto Facebook Messenger, and I will share on Facebook, or I'll find I message myself. I do a little voicemail for myself, and what I'll do is I will give myself a voice message that just says, something along the lines of, "Hey Taylor, I just want you to know that I love you, that I believe in you, that you're safe, that you're safe with me, that I've got your back, that no matter what else happens, I'm here for you." Something like that. And then I listen to that throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I make a new one. And I'm doing this every day. I've been doing this every day now for about for a few days, last few days. Been doing it since Monday. And the reason I'm doing this every day, I could do it just one time. I could just do one. But the reason I'm doing it every day is because I think it's really powerful to create this iterative repetition around expressing something like this to myself. It's like, hey, I got you. I'm here for you. So I would apply that same understanding to your own work and to yourself. You know, and again, ask yourself, who am I responsible for? Well, you're responsible for yourself. You can choose some degree of responsibility for other people. You could choose to give yourself to somebody else. You can choose, whatever you want to choose. But at the end of the day, you're ultimately responsible for yourself. You got to choose yourself. And there's a thing about finding equilibrium. And I think that this is one of the challenges that people in general have. I'm not just going to put this on men or women or whatever. Like, you know, we have a tendency to sometimes, for a lot of people, they either have a tendency to put themselves first to the exclusion of anyone else without any consideration, or vice versa. They put other people first to the exclusion of themselves. I've been guilty mostly of the latter. I've been like, oh, I gotta take care of this person. I gotta love them. I gotta be there for them. I gotta give them my all. And 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 that has its moments where it's appropriate, but then it has its moments where it becomes codependent and unhealthy, and that's its own thing. And that's one of the reasons why I've been doing the self love. It's like, well, how do I love myself, and how do I honor my needs and wants and take care of myself? That's the work I need to do, right? So that then I can show up if somebody comes to me and they say, I want this from you or whatever, that I can be like, well, can I do that or not? If I can, then great. And if I can't, well, I got to be honest. Either way. So some for you to meditate and consider, and I hope you found this video helpful, and have a great weekend.